George Shaw's heart raced as Craxon, the female Kazon diplomat, cornered him in a private chamber aboard the alien mothership. Her intense gaze left no doubt about her intentions. She was here to taste human mating, and she wouldn't take no for an answer. "Ambassador Shaw, I must know more about human pleasure," Craxon demanded, her alien features twisted with curiosity and desire. "Our Kazon mating is purely functional, but you humans, there's something different about you." George's mind reeled. As Earth's representative aboard the Kazon vessel, he'd come to negotiate a peace treaty between their species. Never had he imagined he'd be propositioned by an alien diplomat, let alone one sent to gather intelligence on human mating practices. The stakes were immense. If he refused, the Kazon might view humanity as prudish or weak. If he agreed, he risked personal and diplomatic fallout. Yet as Craxon pressed closer, her alien scent filling his nostrils, George realized this encounter could be pivotal in shaping Kazon perceptions of humanity. "Very well," George said, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "I'll show you how humans experience pleasure." As they began, George was taken aback by Craxon's alien anatomy. Her skin was cool and smooth, unlike any human he'd touched. She moved awkwardly, clearly inexperienced with the concept of physical enjoyment. George took the lead, guiding her with gentle touches and whispered instructions. Craxon's initial confusion quickly gave way to overwhelming ecstasy. Her reactions were far more intense than George had anticipated. She writhed and gasped, her alien vocal cords producing sounds he'd never heard before. It was clear that nothing in Kazon culture had prepared her for this level of sensation. As they finished, Craxon clung to George, her body trembling. "By the stars," she breathed, her eyes wide with awe. "I had no idea. Nothing in our culture compares to this. You must teach me more, Ambassador. Please." George found himself at a crossroads. He'd stumbled upon a potential advantage in negotiations. The Kazon's clear fascination with human pleasure could be leveraged. Yet he also recognized the ethical implications of using intimacy as a diplomatic tool. As Craxon begged desperately for more, George weighed the personal and political ramifications of his actions. He'd given this alien girl a taste of human mating, and now she craved it like nothing else. The power of human pleasure could reshape interstellar relations, but at what cost? With Craxon still clinging to him, her pleas growing more urgent, George made his decision. For better or worse, he would continue this intimate exploration, for the sake of humanity's future among the stars. George gently disentangled himself from Craxon's desperate embrace, his mind racing with the implications of what had just transpired. The alien diplomat's eyes shimmered with a newfound intensity, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. "Ambassador Shaw," Craxon whispered, her voice trembling. I need time to process this experience. It's unlike anything in Kazon culture." George nodded, his own emotions a turbulent mix of exhilaration and guilt. "Of course. Take all the time you need. We should both rest and reflect on this cultural exchange." As he made his way back to his quarters, George's steps felt leaden. The gravity of his actions greatly troubled upon him. He spent hours pacing, analyzing every moment of his encounter with Craxon, questioning the ethics of using intimacy as a diplomatic tool. Sleep eluded him, and when the ship's artificial dawn broke, George found himself summoned to an emergency meeting with the human diplomatic team. Admiral Helena Reeves, a stern woman with steel-gray hair and piercing blue eyes, addressed the assembled group. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've observed a sudden shift in the Kazon's negotiation stance," Reeves announced, her gaze sweeping across the room. "They've become considerably more accommodating. Does anyone have insight into this change?" George felt heat rise to his face, his palms growing clammy. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. The weight of his secret pressed down on him, sealing his lips. As the meeting progressed, George's attention drifted to Craxon, seated across the room with her fellow Kazon delegates. She fidgeted in her seat, her usual composure replaced by nervous energy. Her eyes darted to George repeatedly, a mixture of confusion and longing evident in her alien features. The negotiations continued, but George found it increasingly difficult to focus. Craxon's behavior grew more erratic, her responses to questions becoming disjointed and distracted. Her fellow Kazon exchanged puzzled glances, clearly perplexed by their colleague's unusual conduct. During a recess, Craxon approached George, her movements hesitant yet purposeful. "Ambassador Shaw," she said, her voice low and urgent. "We must speak privately. There are matters of cultural exchange to discuss." George's heart raced as he followed Craxon to a secluded conference room. As the door hissed shut behind them, Craxon turned to face him, her alien features a mask of conflicting emotions. "George," she began, using his first name for the first time, "I can't focus on anything but our encounter. The sensations, the emotions, they're overwhelming. Nothing in Kazon society has prepared me for this." George listened intently as Craxon explained the clinical, emotionless nature of Kazon reproduction. Her words painted a picture of a society devoid of physical pleasure, where intimacy was an alien concept. "I've shared my experience with a few trusted Kazon females," Craxon continued, her voice trembling with excitement. "They're curious, George. They want to know more about human mating practices." George's eyes widened as Craxon proposed her idea for a secret cultural exchange program between select Kazon females and human males. The potential benefits were clear: improved understanding between their species, a possible path to lasting peace. But the risks? "Craxon," George said gently, "human relationships are complex. Physical intimacy often leads to emotional attachments. There's more to our mating practices than just physical sensation." Craxon tilted her head, her brow furrowing in confusion. "Emotional attachments? I don't understand. How can physical acts create non-physical bonds?" Before George could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship, their piercing wail cutting through the air. A computerized voice echoed through the corridors. "Alert! Unknown fleet approaching. All personnel report to designated stations." George and Craxon exchanged a look of shared concern before rushing out of the conference room. The corridors were a flurry of activity as humans and Kazon alike hurried to their posts. In the command center, George found Admiral Reeves engaged in a heated argument with the Kazon High Commander, Zorn. The tension in the room was palpable, crackling like electricity in the air. "We must strike first," Zorn bellowed, his fist slamming against a control panel. "The Vorax are here to challenge our claim on Earth." Admiral Reeves stood her ground, her voice calm but firm. "We don't know their intentions yet. Let's not escalate the situation unnecessarily." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a stern-faced alien with iridescent scales and multiple eyes. "I am Supreme Commander Vex of the Vorax Imperium," the alien announced. "We demand that the Kazons surrender Earth to us immediately. Failure to comply will result in war." The command center erupted into chaos. Zorn roared in defiance, while Admiral Reeves attempted to maintain order. George's mind raced, seeing an opportunity amidst the turmoil. "Admiral Reeves, Commander Zorn," George called out, his voice cutting through the din. "I have a proposal. What if we present a united front? A joint human-Kazon defense strategy could be our best chance against the Vorax." All eyes turned to George as he outlined his plan. He argued passionately for combining their strengths, emphasizing the unique advantages each species could bring to the table. Admiral Reeves hesitated, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's risky, Shaw. How can we be sure the Kazon will honor such an alliance?" George's gaze met Craxon's across the room. In that moment, he saw understanding and support in her alien eyes. "Trust, Admiral," he said firmly. "It's the foundation of any lasting alliance. We must take this leap of faith." As the Vorax fleet drew nearer, George found himself working closely with Craxon to coordinate the human and Kazon forces. Their shared experience, their intimate knowledge of each other, proved invaluable in bridging the communication gap between the two species. Together, they pored over tactical displays, their fingers occasionally brushing as they pointed out strategic positions. The electric current that passed between them with each touch served as a constant reminder of their unique bond. As the combined human and Kazon fleets moved into defensive positions around Earth, George and Kraxon stood side by side on the command deck. The Vorax ships loomed large on the monitor, their sleek, predatory forms a stark reminder of the threat they faced. George felt Kraxon's cool hand slip into his, their fingers intertwining. No words were needed. They both understood the gravity of the moment. The fate of Earth, the future of human-Kazon relations, and the complex feelings growing between them, all hung in the balance. As the Vorax fleet edged closer, George squeezed Kraxon's hand, drawing strength from her presence. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. A union of two worlds, forged in the heat of desire and tempered by the fires of impending conflict. The tension on the command deck was palpable as the Vorax fleet drew closer. George and Kraxon stood side by side, their intertwined hands a symbol of the fragile alliance between their species. Suddenly, the calm was shattered by a barrage of weapons fire from the Vorax ships. "They're targeting Earth's orbital defense stations," Admiral Reeves shouted, her eyes wide with alarm. George's mind raced. He turned to Kraxon, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared understanding. "We need to combine our strengths," he said urgently. "Kazon shielding technology with human weapon systems." Kraxon nodded, her alien features set with commitment. She barked orders to her crew in her native tongue, while George relayed the plan to Admiral Reeves. Within moments, the combined human-Kazon fleet sprang into action. Kazon ships extended their advanced energy shields to protect vulnerable human vessels, while Earth ships unleashed a devastating volley of missiles and energy weapons. The Vorax, caught off guard by the unexpected coordination between the two species, faltered in their attack. George watched with a mix of awe and pride as human and Kazon ships moved in perfect synchronization, repelling the initial assault. As the battle raged on, George found himself increasingly impressed by Kraxon's tactical acumen. Her quick thinking and innovative strategies repeatedly outmaneuvered the Vorax ships. "Kraxon, that flanking maneuver was brilliant," George said, his voice filled with admiration. She turned to him, her alien features arranged in what he now recognized as a smile. "Your species' unpredictability complements our methodical approach perfectly, George." Their exchange didn't go unnoticed. Admiral Reeves and High Commander Zorn exchanged meaningful glances, the potential of a deeper alliance clearly on their minds. The moment of triumph was short-lived. A massive Vorax battlecruiser suddenly broke through the defensive line, its weapons trained on the Kazon mothership. "If that ship takes out our command center, the entire defense will collapse," Kraxon said, her voice tight with concern. George's mind whirred with possibilities. A plan, dangerous and bold, began to form. "We need to take out that battlecruiser from the inside," he announced. The command center erupted in protests. Admiral Reeves stepped forward, her face a mask of concern. "Ambassador Shaw, that's suicide. We can't risk—" "It's our only chance," George interrupted. He turned to face the gathered leaders, human and Kazon alike. "A small team can slip past their shields and sabotage the ship from within. It's risky, yes, but it's our best shot at turning the tide." Before anyone could object further, Kraxon spoke up. "I volunteer to join Ambassador Shaw on this mission." George's eyes widened in surprise, but he felt a surge of gratitude and something deeper, something he wasn't quite ready to name. Within the hour, a mixed team of humans and Kazon was assembled. They boarded a modified shuttle, its systems calibrated to slip through the gaps in Vorax shielding technology. As they approached the massive Vorax battlecruiser, George felt Kraxon's cool hand on his arm. "Whatever happens, George," she said softly, "I'm honored to fight by your side." The shuttle slipped through the Vorax shields, docking with the alien vessel. As they disembarked, the team immediately encountered resistance. Vorax soldiers, their iridescent scales gleaming under harsh lighting, opened fire. George and Kraxon moved in perfect sync, covering each other as they fought their way deeper into the ship. George's quick thinking complemented Kraxon's superior strength and agility. As they battled through the corridors, George found himself constantly aware of Kraxon's presence. Her movements were fluid and graceful, even in the heat of combat. More than once, her quick actions saved his life, and he returned the favor in kind. They reached the power core, but the victory was short-lived. A squad of Vorax elites ambushed them, their superior weaponry cutting down several team members in the initial volley. George's mind raced. He spotted a weakness in the core's containment field, a way to overload it and destroy the ship. But the process would require manual activation, a suicide mission. "Everyone, fall back to the shuttle," George ordered. "I'll stay and initiate the overload." Craxon's eyes widened in shock. "No," she said firmly, stepping closer to him. "I won't leave you behind, George." "Craxon, please," George began, but she cut him off. "These past days, working with you, fighting beside you, it's awakened something in me I never knew existed," Craxon said, her voice thick with emotion. "My feelings for you go beyond curiosity or duty. We stand a better chance together. Always." George was stunned by her words, by the depth of emotion in her alien eyes. He realized that his own feelings had grown far beyond their initial encounter, beyond diplomatic necessity. He nodded, accepting her decision. As the rest of the team retreated, George and Craxon worked feverishly to sabotage the ship's systems. Alarms blared, and the sound of approaching Vorax troops echoed through the corridors. "The containment field isn't collapsing," George said, frustration evident in his voice. "We need to reroute power from the auxiliary systems." Craxon moved to a nearby console, her fingers flying over the alien controls. "I'm bypassing their security protocols. It's unlike anything I've seen before." With time running out and enemy forces closing in, George and Craxon shared a look of understanding. Without a word, they moved together, their lips meeting in a passionate kiss. It was a moment of connection, transcending species and duty, acknowledging the depth of their bond. As they parted, the ship's systems began to fail catastrophically. Explosions rocked the vessel, and emergency lights bathed the core room in an eerie red glow. "Time to go," George said, grabbing Craxon's hand. They ran through the disintegrating ship, dodging falling debris and pockets of escaping atmosphere. They reached the escape pod bay just as a massive explosion tore through the corridor behind them. George slammed the pod's launch controls, and they were ejected into space just as the Vorax battlecruiser exploded in a spectacular ball of fire. As they drifted in the escape pod, waiting for rescue, George and Craxon watched the battle unfold through the small viewport. The destruction of the Vorax flagship had thrown their fleet into chaos, allowing the human Kazon alliance to press their advantage. "We did it," Craxon said softly, her hand finding George's in the dim light of the pod. George nodded, his mind already racing ahead to the challenges that awaited them. The political ramifications of their actions, the future of human-Kazon relations, and the complexities of their own relationship loomed large. But as rescue ships approached their pod, George looked at Craxon and felt a surge of hope. Whatever came next, they would face it together. A union of two worlds, forged in battle and bound by something deeper than either of them had ever expected. As rescue ships approached their escape pod, George and Craxon shared a moment of quiet relief. Their successful mission had not only destroyed the Vorax battlecruiser, but also demonstrated the potential of human-Kazon cooperation. Little did they know that this was only the beginning of a much larger adventure. Upon their return to the Kazon mothership, George and Craxon were greeted with a hero's welcome. The command deck erupted in cheers as they stepped out of the rescue shuttle, still bearing the marks of their harrowing escape. Admiral Reeves and High Commander Zorn stood at the forefront, their faces a mixture of pride and relief. "Ambassador Shaw, Lieutenant Craxon," Admiral Reeves began, her voice carrying across the deck. "Your bravery and ingenuity have not only saved countless lives, but have also paved the way for a new era of cooperation between our species." High Commander Zorn stepped forward, his massive form towering over the gathered crowd. "In light of your actions and the success of our combined forces, the Kazon Empire officially extends its hand in alliance to the humans of Earth." The announcement sent shockwaves through the assembled crew. Humans and Kazon alike exchanged looks of surprise and excitement. George felt Craxon's hand slip into his, a gesture that did not go unnoticed by those around them. In the days that followed, George and Craxon found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of diplomatic activity. Their unique partnership became a symbol of the human Kazon alliance, and they were tasked with overseeing various joint projects aimed at strengthening the newfound cooperation between their species. One afternoon, as they pored over plans for a joint scientific expedition, George noticed Craxon's distracted expression. "Is everything all right?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Craxon hesitated before responding. "The High Council has requested a briefing on human mating practices," she said, her scales shifting in what George now recognized as embarrassment. "They seem particularly interested in the concept of recreational mating." George felt his own face flush. "I see," he said, clearing his throat. "And they want me to—" "To present the information, yes," Craxon confirmed, "along with a team of human experts." The presentation to the Kazon High Council proved to be one of the most challenging experiences of George's diplomatic career. He stood before the assembled alien dignitaries, acutely aware of Craxon's presence among them, as he explained the intricacies of human relationships and reproduction. Humans engage in sexual activity not only for procreation, but also for pleasure and emotional bonding, George explained, trying to maintain a professional tone despite the personal nature of the subject. The reaction from the council was mixed. Several members recoiled in shock, their multiple eyes widening in disbelief. Others leaned forward, clearly intrigued by the concept. One elderly Kazon rose to his feet, his voice quivering with indignation. "This is an abomination. Such practices would tear apart the very fabric of our society." Before George could respond, a younger female Kazon named Vexera stood up. "With all due respect, esteemed elder, perhaps it's time we reconsider our own practices. The humans have achieved great things, and their approach to mating may offer valuable insights." The council chamber erupted into heated debate. George caught Craxon's eye across the room, seeing his own mix of discomfort and amusement mirrored in her expression. As news of the alliance and the cultural exchanges spread, both Earth and the Kazan Empire faced internal struggles. On Earth, conservative groups protested against what they saw as the corruption of human values by alien influence. George found himself targeted by vitriolic speeches and angry demonstrations. One evening, as he and Craxon walked through a diplomatic reception, they overheard two human dignitaries whispering. "It's unnatural," one said, casting a disgusted look at George and Craxon. "Humans should stick to their own kind." George felt Craxon stiffen beside him. He squeezed her hand reassuringly, ignoring the disapproving glances from those around them. The situation reached a boiling point when a group of radical Kazon conservatives attempted to assassinate George. As he and Craxon were leaving a joint strategy meeting, a plasma bolt sizzled past George's head, missing him by inches. Craxon's training kicked in instantly. She tackled George to the ground, shielding him with her body as security forces rushed to apprehend the attackers. In the aftermath of the assassination attempt, High Commander Zorn ordered a full investigation. The results revealed a larger conspiracy within the Kazan ranks, exposing deep-seated fears about the changes brought by the alliance with humans. As tensions mounted, Admiral Reeves called an emergency meeting with the key figures of the human Kazan alliance. "We need to demonstrate the benefits of our cooperation," she said, her gaze sweeping across the assembled leaders. "I propose a joint exploration mission to a nearby uncharted solar system." The idea was met with cautious optimism. George and Craxon, given their proven ability to work together, were selected to lead the mission. As they began assembling their crew, carefully selecting individuals who represented the best of both species, George and Craxon found themselves drawing closer. Away from the public eye, they explored the complexities of their relationship, bridging the gap between their different physiologies and cultures. On the eve of their departure, George and Craxon stood before the newly constructed hybrid ship, a marvel of combined human and Kazon engineering. Its sleek lines and advanced technology represented the pinnacle of their alliance. As they prepared to board, George turned to Craxon. "Ready for another adventure?" he asked, a smile playing on his lips. Craxon's scales shimmered in the artificial light of the launch bay. "With you?" "Always," she replied, her alien features arranged in what George now recognized as a smile of her own. They stepped onto the ship, acutely aware of the weight of responsibility on their shoulders. The success of this mission could determine the fate of the human-Kazan alliance and the future of their own relationship. As the ship's engines hummed to life, George and Craxon took their positions on the bridge, ready to face whatever challenges the universe had in store for them. As the hybrid ship glided through the vast expanse of space, George and Craxon stood side by side on the bridge, their eyes fixed on the screen before them. The stars streaked by in brilliant lines of light, a testament to the advanced propulsion system that combined the best of human and Kazan technology. Approaching the designated coordinates, announced Lieutenant Chen, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Sensors are picking up. Wait, that can't be right. George leaned forward, his brow furrowing. What is it, Lieutenant? Chen's eyes widened as she double-checked her readings. Sir, we're detecting a spatial anomaly directly ahead. It's unlike anything in our database. Craxon moved to the science station, her scaled fingers efficiently manipulating the controls. Confirmed. The anomaly appears to be masking an entire star system. Our combined sensors are penetrating the distortion field. George felt a surge of excitement. This was exactly the kind of discovery their mission had hoped to make. Full stop, Lieutenant Chen. Let's approach with caution. As the ship slowed to a halt, the view screen flickered and transformed. The empty void of space shimmered and parted like a curtain, revealing a vibrant star system hidden beyond. At the center, a blue-green planet hung suspended, its surface swirled with white clouds and vast oceans. Life signs? George asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Craxon's multifaceted eyes blinked rapidly as she processed the data. Affirmative. The planet's atmosphere is compatible with both human and Kazan physiology. Preliminary scans indicate a diverse ecosystem. The bridge erupted in a flurry of excited chatter. Human and Kazan crew members alike shared looks of wonder and anticipation. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, a chance to make history together. George turned to Craxon, a smile playing on his lips. Shall we take a closer look? Craxon's scales rippled in a pattern that George had come to recognize as enthusiasm. I thought you'd never ask. Within hours, a landing party had been assembled. George and Craxon led the team, consisting of Dr. Alara Voss, a human xenobiologist, and Zextor, a Kazan geological expert. As their shuttle broke through the planet's atmosphere, they were greeted by a breathtaking landscape of purple-leafed forests and towering crystal formations that sparkled in the alien sunlight. The team touched down in a clearing, the grass beneath their feet a deep indigo. As they disembarked, the air filled with a chorus of alien chirps and calls. Fascinating, Dr. Voss murmured, her handheld scanner whirring as she analyzed the environment. The plant life here seems to use a form of crystalline photosynthesis I've never encountered before. Zextor knelt to examine the soil, his gravelly voice filled with awe. The mineral composition is unlike anything in Kazan space. The potential applications are limitless. As the scientists busied themselves with their initial surveys, George and Craxon led a small scouting party deeper into the alien forest. The vegetation grew denser, the crystal formations more intricate. Suddenly, Craxon held up a hand, signaling the group to halt. There, she whispered, pointing ahead. George squinted, then felt his breath catch in his throat. Through a gap in the trees, he could make out the unmistakable lines of artificial structures. Ancient, weathered, but undeniably the work of intelligent hands, or whatever appendages their builders might have possessed. We need to get a closer look, George said, his heart racing with the thrill of discovery. As they approached the ruins, the true scale of the ancient city became apparent. Towering spires of a pearlescent material stretched towards the sky, their surfaces etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. These structures, Craxon mused, running a hand along one of the walls, they're not built, they're grown. George nodded, equally mesmerized. Some kind of organic technology, maybe? We should get the others. This is beyond anything we... His words were cut short as the ground beneath their feet suddenly trembled. Craxon's quick reflexes saved them both as she yanked George back just as a section of the floor gave way. But it was too late. The entire team found themselves sliding down a smooth spiral chute, deeper and deeper into the heart of the ruins. They landed with a thud in a vast underground chamber, separated from the rest of the landing party. As George helped Craxon to her feet, the chamber around them hummed to life. Soft, bioluminescent lights pulsed along the walls, bathing them in an ethereal glow. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and something else, ancient, yet alive. "Are you all right?" George asked, his hand lingering on Craxon's arm. She nodded, her scales flushing with a deeper hue. "Yes, George, look at this place." All around them, strange devices and artifacts filled the chamber. Curved consoles made of the same pearlescent material as the buildings above stood silent, waiting to be awakened. In the center of the room, a large spherical object hovered, slowly rotating. As they explored the chamber, searching for a way out, George found himself hyper-aware of Craxon's presence. In the confined space, her alien scent, a mixture of spice and ozone, filled his senses. Their hands brushed as they examined a particularly intricate device, sending a jolt of electricity through him. Craxon turned to him, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the bioluminescent glow. "George, Whatever she was about to say was lost as their lips met. The kiss was passionate, urgent, born of the adrenaline of discovery and the pent-up tension of their unique relationship. George marveled at the strange texture of Craxon's scaled skin, so alien yet so enticing. Just as things were heating up, the chamber around them surged with energy. They sprang apart as holographic displays flickered to life, filling the air with swirling images in alien script. "By the stars," Craxon breathed, her professional demeanor reasserting itself. "George, are you seeing this?" The holograms coalesced into a narrative, telling the story of an ancient race called the progenitors. Through a mixture of images and intuitive symbols, they learned of a species dedicated to fostering life throughout the galaxy. The progenitors had seeded countless worlds with the potential for intelligent life, guiding evolution from afar. As the presentation reached its climax, two planets appeared side by side. One clearly Earth, the other the rocky homeworld of the Kazon. The implication was unmistakable. George turned to Craxon, his mind blown. We share a common origin?" Craxon's scales rippled with emotion. "This changes everything, George. Our peoples, our history, we're not so different after all." Before they could fully process this paradigm-shifting revelation, they heard the muffled shouts of their team from above. Using their newfound understanding of the progenitor technology, they managed to activate a gravity lift, ascending back to the surface. As they emerged, blinking in the alien sunlight, they were greeted by the concerned faces of their landing party. But there was no time to explain. The ground shook, and a massive energy shield shimmered into existence overhead, cutting them off from their ship. In the distance, a sleek, predatory shape appeared in the sky. A Vorax scout ship, no doubt drawn by the energy emissions of the awakened progenitor technology. George and Craxon shared a look of dedication. They had unlocked a secret that could reshape the galaxy, but first, they needed to survive long enough to share it. With the Vorax closing in and their team trapped on the surface, the real challenge was just beginning. With the Vorax closing in and their team trapped on the surface, George and Craxon knew they had to act fast. "We need to find a way to deactivate that shield," George said, his eyes scanning the alien landscape for anything that might help. Craxon nodded, her scales rippling with tenacity. "The progenitor technology we saw below, perhaps we can use it to our advantage." They scrambled back to the entrance of the underground chamber, their team following close behind. As they descended, George's mind raced, combining what he knew of human engineering with the glimpses of progenitor tech they'd seen. "Look for anything that resembles a control interface," he instructed the team as they spread out across the chamber. Dr. Voss called out from one of the curved consoles. "I think I found something. These symbols match the ones we saw in the holographic display." George and Craxon hurried over, their hands brushing as they both reached for the console. They shared a quick glance, the memory of their kiss still fresh in their minds, before focusing on the task at hand. "If we can just," George muttered, his fingers dancing across the pearlescent surface. Craxon's multifaceted eyes widened. "Wait, look at this pattern. It's similar to Kazon's shield modulation sequences." Together, they worked on the alien console, their unique combination of knowledge proving invaluable. The chamber hummed with energy as they manipulated the ancient systems. Suddenly, the ground shook, and a low rumble echoed through the ruins. "I think it's working," Zextor shouted from near the entrance. "The shield is fluctuating." George's fingers flew faster across the console. "We need to create an opening big enough for the shuttle to get through." With a final push of effort, they managed to create a small gap in the energy shield. The team cheered, but their celebration was short-lived as the reality of their situation set in. "We don't have much time," Craxon said, her voice tense. "The Vorax will be here soon." George nodded, his face grim. "We need to evacuate, but—" He looked around the chamber, his eyes lingering on the wealth of alien technology surrounding them. "We can't leave all this behind. The knowledge here could change everything." Craxon understood immediately. "You're suggesting we stay?" "Not all of us," George replied, "but a small team to gather as much data as we can." The decision was made quickly. The bulk of the landing party would return to the ship, warning the human-Kazon alliance about the Vorax threat. George, Craxon, Dr. Voss, Zextor, and 2 others would remain to continue their research. As the evacuation team prepared to leave, George pulled Craxon aside. "You don't have to stay," he said softly. "I know how important your position is in the Kazon hierarchy." Craxon's scales flushed a deep blue. "My place is here, George, with you, with this discovery." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the chaos around them faded away. Then reality crashed back as the sound of a Vorax scout ship filled the air. "Go!" George shouted to the evacuation team. They watched as their comrades raced to the shuttle, barely making it through the gap in the shield before it closed behind them. With the Vorax soldiers now on the ground, George and his remaining team delved deeper into the progenitor ruins. They worked feverishly, extracting data from every console they could access. "This is incredible," Dr. Voss breathed, her eyes wide as she scanned through streams of information. "Their understanding of genetics is light years beyond ours." Zextor nodded in agreement. "And these energy conversion formulas, they could revolutionize our entire power grid." As they worked, George and Craxon found themselves falling into a natural rhythm. They moved in tandem, their different physiologies and backgrounds complementing each other perfectly as they deciphered the alien technology. The team was so engrossed in their work that they almost missed the sound of heavy footsteps echoing through the ruins. George's head snapped up, his eyes meeting Craxon's. "Vorax," she whispered. They quickly shut down their equipment, plunging the chamber into darkness. George led the team through the twisting corridors of the ruins, using the knowledge they'd gained to stay one step ahead of their pursuers. As they crouched in a hidden alcove, George felt Craxon's hand on his arm. He turned to her, seeing the mix of fear and excitement in her alien eyes. "George," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "There's something else we found in the database. Something about us, humans and Kazon." Before she could continue, the sound of Vorax weapons charging filled the air. George tensed, ready to spring into action. Whatever Craxon had discovered would have to wait. For now, survival was their only priority. As they prepared to make their next move, George couldn't help but wonder what other secrets the progenitor ruins held, and how those secrets might change the future of both their species forever. As the sound of Vorax weapons faded into the distance, George and Craxon exchanged a look of relief. They had managed to evade their pursuers for now, but they knew they couldn't stay in the ruins forever. "We need to find a way off this planet," George whispered, his eyes scanning the shadowy corridor. Craxon nodded, her scales shimmering in the dim light. "The progenitor technology we've seen, perhaps it's not limited to this facility." Their theory proved correct. As they explored deeper into the complex, they stumbled upon a hangar bay housing a sleek, organic-looking vessel. It was unmistakably of progenitor design, its pearlescent hull pulsing with a faint bioluminescence. "This could be our ticket out of here," George said, his voice filled with awe as he ran his hand along the ship's smooth surface. With the Vorax closing in, the team wasted no time boarding the vessel. To their amazement, the ship responded to their presence, systems coming online as if awakening from a long slumber. As they made their escape, leaving the planet's atmosphere behind, George couldn't help but marvel at the ship's intuitive controls. It was as if the vessel could anticipate their needs, responding to their thoughts almost before they could vocalize them. Days turned into weeks as they journeyed through uncharted space, always staying one step ahead of their Vorax pursuers. The team worked tirelessly to decipher the vast trove of progenitor knowledge stored in the ship's databases. George and Craxon found themselves growing closer with each passing day, their unique bond deepening as they unraveled the mysteries of their shared heritage. Late one night, as they pored over a particularly complex set of data, a sudden alert caught their attention. "It's some kind of distress signal," Craxon said, her multifaceted eyes widening as she interpreted the readout. George leaned in, his shoulder brushing against hers. "Progenitor in origin?" She nodded, her scales flushing a deep blue, emanating from a nearby star system. After a brief discussion with the team, they decided to investigate. As they entered the system, a massive structure came into view, a space station of clear progenitor design, its sweeping architecture dwarfing their ship. "It's incredible," Dr. Voss breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. As they docked with the station, George couldn't shake a feeling of anticipation. Something told him they were on the verge of a monumental discovery. The team made their way through the station's vast corridors, each step revealing new marvels of progenitor engineering. But it was what they found at the heart of the station that truly took their breath away: a fully functional genetic research facility. "This equipment, it's light years beyond anything we have," Zextor said, running his hands over a sleek console. George and Craxon shared a look of excitement. "We need to set up a base here," George said. "This could be the key to understanding our true origins." As they delved deeper into the station's databases, George and Craxon made a startling discovery. The progenitors hadn't just seeded their worlds with life, they had engineered humans and Kazon to be genetically compatible. "It was all by design," Craxon whispered, her voice filled with awe. "Our attraction, our ability to work together so seamlessly." George took her hand, marveling at how natural it felt despite their physiological differences. "It doesn't make what we feel any less real." Their moment of revelation was cut short by a blaring alarm. The station's long-range sensors had detected an incoming Vorax fleet. "We can't let them get their hands on this research," George said, his teeth clenched. Craxon nodded, her scales rippling with determination. "We need to defend the station." As the rest of the team prepared to leave with the progenitor ship and the data they'd gathered, George made the difficult decision to stay behind. To his surprise and secret joy, Craxon refused to leave his side. Together, they raced to activate the station's ancient defense systems. As they worked, they discovered something extraordinary. The systems responded more effectively when they operated them in tandem, as if designed for a human-Kazon pair. The Vorax fleet arrived, their ships swarming around the station like angry insects. George and Craxon moved in perfect synchronization, their hands flying over the controls as they directed the station's weaponry. Beams of energy lanced out from the station, cutting through the Vorax ships with surgical precision. But for every vessel they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. "We need more power," George shouted over the din of battle. Craxon's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "The main computer core. It might have fail-safes we haven't discovered yet." They sprinted to the core, dodging falling debris as the station shuddered under the Vorax assault. As they reached the central chamber, they found a console unlike any they'd seen before. Without hesitation, they placed their hands on the interface. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Energy surged through their bodies, their minds expanding to encompass the entire station. In that moment, George and Craxon were one with the progenitor technology, their thoughts directing the station's defenses with unparalleled efficiency. The Vorax fleet, caught off guard by the sudden shift in the battle, began to falter. Ship after ship fell to the station's weapons, until finally the remaining Vorax vessels turned tail and fled. As the last enemy ship disappeared from the sensors, George and Craxon felt the energy recede, leaving them exhilarated but drained. What just happened?" George asked, his voice hoarse. Craxon shook her head, her scales shimmering with residual energy. "I think we just experienced what the progenitors intended for our species." As they made their way back to the control room, they knew their journey was just the beginning. The knowledge they'd uncovered, the power they'd glimpsed, it all came with immense responsibility. George looked out at the star-filled expanse beyond the station's viewports, then turned to Craxon. "What do we do now?" She took his hand, her multifaceted eyes meeting his. "We go home, we tell our people the truth, and then we shape the future the progenitors envisioned for us." As they began preparations for their return journey, George and Craxon knew that the challenges ahead would test them in ways they couldn't imagine. But standing together, human and Kazon united, they felt ready to face whatever the universe might throw at them. George and Craxon stood at the station's main control interface, their hands intertwined as they gazed out at the star-filled expanse. The enormity of their discovery greatly troubled on their minds, but a spark of excitement ignited within them. "We need to bring this knowledge back to our people," George said, his voice filled with grit. Craxon nodded, her scales shimmering with anticipation. "But how? This station is too valuable to leave behind." As if in response to their dilemma, the console before them lit up with new information. George's eyes widened as he scanned the readout. "Craxon, look at this. The station, it's not just a research facility, it's a ship." Together they worked to decipher the ancient progenitor controls. Hours turned into days as they unlocked the station's hidden capabilities. Slowly but surely, the massive structure began to move, its countless systems coming to life. As they journeyed through the vastness of space, George and Craxon continued their research, delving deeper into the genetic database. The revelations they uncovered were staggering. "It's all here," Craxon breathed, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the scrolling data. "The progenitors didn't just seed our worlds, they engineered us to be compatible." George felt a mix of awe and trepidation. "This changes everything. How will our people react?" Their answer came sooner than expected. As they approached the border of Allied space, their sensors detected a fleet of ships, both human and Kazon. "They found us," George said, tension evident in his voice. Craxon placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We knew this moment would come. We're ready." As the station dropped out of faster-than-light travel, they were hailed by the lead ships. The faces of Admiral Reeves and High Commander Zorn appeared on the main view screen. "George, Craxon," Admiral Reeves said, his expression a mix of relief and curiosity. "We've been searching for you. What in the name of all that's holy have you found?" George and Craxon exchanged a glance before responding. "Admiral, High Commander," George began, "we've discovered something that will change the course of both our civilizations forever." Over the next few hours, George and Craxon carefully presented their findings to the assembled leaders. They explained the progenitors' role in their creation, the advanced technology they'd uncovered, and the revelation of their engineered compatibility. The reaction was immediate and intense, voices raised in disbelief, anger, and fear. High Commander Zorn's scales flashed a deep red. "This is preposterous. Are we to believe our entire existence is nothing but a grand experiment?" Admiral Reeves remained silent, his brow furrowed in deep thought. Finally, he spoke. "If what you're saying is true, it has profound implications for both our species. But how can we be certain?" George took a deep breath, steeling himself for what came next. "We can prove it. Craxon and I, we're willing to undergo public genetic testing." The room fell silent. Craxon stepped forward, her voice steady. "We believe this is the key to our future, a future where humans and Kazon can truly unite." The tests were conducted under the watchful eyes of both human and Kazan scientists. As the results came in, gasps of astonishment filled the laboratory. Not only were George and Craxon genetically compatible, but their potential offspring would possess enhanced traits from both species. News of the discovery spread like wildfire through both civilizations. Debates raged across every forum and meeting hall. Some called for an immediate end to the alliance, viewing the revelation as a violation of their autonomy. Others saw it as an opportunity for unprecedented advancement. In the midst of the chaos, other human Kazon couples began to come forward. Some, to everyone's shock, were already expecting hybrid children. George and Craxon found themselves at the center of a storm, advocating tirelessly for unity and understanding. Their impassioned pleas, backed by the incredible advancements they'd brought back, slowly began to sway opinions. After weeks of intense negotiation, a decision was reached. A joint human Kazon colony would be established on a neutral planet, a place where interspecies couples could live and raise their families without prejudice. As George and Craxon stood on the bridge of the progenitor station, now in orbit around their new home, they felt a sense of accomplishment and hope. "We did it," George said softly, gazing down at the planet below. Craxon's scales shimmered with a mix of emotions. "This is just the beginning, George. We have so much work ahead of us." He turned to her, a smile playing on his lips. "I can't think of anyone I'd rather face it with." As they began the process of establishing the colony, using the advanced progenitor technology to create a self-sustaining habitat, George and Craxon knew they were laying the foundation for a new era. An era of cooperation, understanding, and shared destiny between humans and Kazon. The first colonists began to arrive, a mix of human Kazon couples and forward-thinking individuals from both species. Among them were scientists eager to study the progenitor technology, artists inspired by the blending of cultures, and families ready to forge a new life. George and Craxon worked tirelessly, overseeing the construction of homes, laboratories, and community centers. The colony grew rapidly, fueled by the combination of human ingenuity and Kazon strength. As the years passed, the once controversial idea of human-Kazon relationships became increasingly accepted. The success of the colony and its thriving hybrid population gradually changed attitudes across both societies. On a warm evening, 10 years after the colony's founding, George and Craxon stood hand in hand before a massive crowd gathered in the central plaza. Humans, Kazon, and their hybrid offspring filled the space, their faces turned expectantly toward the couple who had made it all possible. George began to speak, his voice carrying across the hushed audience. 10 years ago, we stood at a crossroads. We faced a choice between fear and hope, between division and unity. Today, as I look out at all of you, I see the future we chose.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.